Look. Unbroken. Like magic. See? Go ahead. Have a drink. It'll be just us for a while yet. There's some Ginebra around here somewhere. Nasty stuff. But you can cut it with limonada. Limeade. It'll do till the medics get here. Then there's that short trip to the hospital. Cruz Roja in Spanish. Or, if you prefer English, Cruz Row. Ha! Want to know my last words? I can't watch this. You know I can't stand the sight of blood. Well, I've got to hand it to old Bill. I never saw a drop. But you may be more interested in the last words that I heard. They were, after all, spoken by old Bill. Queer. Junkie. Infamous husband. Infamous for what he just now did. Famous writer. You're welcome, Bill. Well, here's what he said.
Put that glass on your head, Joni. Let me show the boys what a great shot old Bill is.
Oh, yes. The boys. He was always trying to impress them. In this case, one particular boy. I'll allow this is not old Bill's finest hour. He's sitting on my lap, holding my head, sobbing. Lucky thing he's sitting on me, though. I'd fall over otherwise. Mutual support. What would a marriage be without it? We had a honeymoon. You know that? Right after old Bill came up to New York and got me out of the nut house. Benny's. They'll do that. He took me back to Texas, and we bought a farm. Bought the farm? Middle of nowhere. Just us at the start. Us and little Julie. He had to have his guns. Sometimes in the evening, he would go out to the orchard and use apples as targets. One evening, after Julie was asleep, I wandered out there behind him, 20 feet behind, like a concubine. He knew I was there. Finally, at the edge of the orchard, he turned. I found an apple and stood against a tree. He watched me like I was a mad woman as I slowly put the apple on my head. It was hard to balance. I had to stand very still. I remember the sound of birds and animals and the wind. He watched me for a long time in that way of his, and then moved until the sun was behind him, and waited as I moved around to face him. Neither one of us said a word. He was a black silhouette. The sun was warm on my face. The sounds of birds and animals and the wind. I stood there for a long moment, so straight and quiet and proud, like a young boy and not, 25-year-old twice-divorced woman with a Benzedrine habit and a kid and another kid on the way. I knew he wouldn't miss. I knew I couldn't hold it long.
Bang!
The bird and animal noises all stopped. just the wind now. Bits of apple all over me. I found another apple and put it on my head.
Bang!
Repeat.
Bang!
The sun got lower and lower, and the silhouette got darker. Later on, in the middle of the night, back in our little shotgun shack, I got up from the couch, brown bits of apple still stuck to my hair, and I knocked on his door. Bill? Bill? I just want to lie in your arms for a while. Well, here I am, in his arms at last. Oh, he's lowering me to the floor. Oh, ever so gently. You can't see him, but he's really quite broken up. Everyone's gone out to call the cops and doctors and lawyers, and he's just all alone, holding my head, sobbing. Sobbing? Old Bill? For the second time today. The second. I've never seen such emotion. He should kill me more often. The first time? Oh, we'll get to that. Probably. Relax. Have another shot. Drink. Drink. I am feeling so good all of a sudden. It's like I was a dirty sheet and someone gave me a sharp yank off the bed and washed me and dried me and tucked me back in. No more wrinkles, no lumps, no strange clumps of hair. But am I ready to go to sleep? Hell no. I'm ready to run off to the city and have an adventure. But then again, that's what got me here. Lying on the floor in a shabby apartment above an expat dive in Ciudad de Mexico. I must have a hole in my head. When I was a kid, I read an article in Life magazine, an expose of conditions in the Pilgrim State Hospital on Long Island. Life in the Nut House, in other words. Photographs by Alfred Eisenstadt. That would impress me later on. I graduated from Barnard College with a degree in journalism. I try not to look so shocked. I had ambitions once, in junior high. I was going to be the most famous person ever from Loudonville. It wasn't such an outrageous ambition. The bar was set provocatively low. Major Henry Rathbone? Ever heard of him? Show of hands? He was sitting next to President Lincoln when Lincoln was shot. In the head, as it happened. There was a woman sitting on the major's other side. Later on, he married her. Much later on, he killed her. Shot her, as it happened. History does not reveal where. As punishment, Rathbone was sent to the nut house. Old Bill didn't get the nut house. Old Bill got 2 weeks in jail and a ticket out of the country. Later on, he got famous. Much later on, he had nature trails named after him. I was a strange kid, lying on my frilly bed, devouring Life magazine photos, rows of the afflicted, floating in special baths attended by nurses clothed in white, gliding among them. Of course, there were other images, but photos that didn't stick with a 13-year-old. Inmates with vacant stares, looking through barred windows, in straps. I remembered those when I got pregnant. Pregnant? Iron bars? Have you maybe skipped a few steps, Joni? I did. I skipped a few steps. I should tell you that old Bill wasn't the dad. I hadn't met him yet. Old Bill, I mean. I had definitely met the dad. It's just that my husband hadn't, if you catch my drift. Don't give me that look. You can't very well have an adventure without an adventuress now, can you? My husband, here's the thing. He was away at the time in Mississippi, training with the Army. We were fighting a war. Did I mention? Well, that made things even more awkward. What's a girl to do? Why, go nuts, of course. My girlfriends and I came up with this scheme. I was going to splash around Times Square in a rainstorm, sans umbrella, talking nonsense the whole while. I'd walk all wobbly with one foot in the gutter and the other foot on the sidewalk. The cops would show up. They would take me to the nut house. The nut house would find out that my husband was in the Army. They'd send for him, and I'd be sprung from captivity by my amorous soldier boy. And, immediately thereafter, in a nearby hotel room, impregnated. Well, it all went according to plan. Until the cops showed up, handcuffed me, threw me into the paddy wagon, and took me to Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital. The last stop for the indigent and hopeless excited cases. The last stop. What that means is you don't have to worry about anyone suspecting that you're really sane. No one on the staff, anyway. Everything you say becomes some variation on proclaiming yourself Napoleon Bonaparte. When all you have is a diagnosis, everything looks like a disease. They made me wait in this long hallway full of locked doors. One of those doors had a tiny window. I had nothing to do all day but pace up and down that hallway. I was still practicing my crazy act. Every time, at that end, I would look through the window. I could see a metal staircase, painted black, descending. A light bulb with no shade, hung on a long cord. I'd imagine I was nuts, looking at my future. And then I'd turn and do the same thing again. They didn't take me through that door. Instead, they stuck me in the commons room. Hour after hour, sitting,
Budding with child.
watching the pacers,
The stairs.
the mutterers,
Taking in the asylum.
taking in the asylum, taking in me.
Feeling something creeping in.
You ever think that maybe everything is a disease? You begin to think. You maybe begin to think that every thought is a sore. Every thought is a sore. You think that. An open sore that everyone can see. Everyone in the commons. The Nut House Commons. I am a mama bear, and I take care of my own. And if a mama bear needs help, she damn well will get help. And I'm not talking about what they were offering. And I'm not talking about husband, boy, soldier. The best times I had with Bill were in that shotgun shack. After he tired of me knocking on the door. I'd hear the bed creak and his feet fall across the floor, and the door would slowly open.
Oh, it's you. I was hoping for someone else.
That was his way of being funny. I'd crawl into bed and we'd stay awake for hours, talking. Talking with such guarded relief. Here's what I longed to say in the asylum and had no one to say it to.
Look, I'm just in here because abortions are expensive and dangerous. I'm pretending to be crazy so that my husband can come back, ejaculate into me, and go back to war. If all goes well, I'll spend the rest of my days lying to him, and to this child, and to my family and my in-laws and all related relations. And if all goes well and according to plan, the only person who will ever know about this is me. And the girlfriends I once had.
He was so kind when he finally showed up. So soldierly and forbearing. The forbearance barely lasted past the cheap hotel door. Things still went according to plan. Just not for me, and not for him. My husband at the time. Not old Bill. Bill came and got me after my second stay. It's a great way to break the ice with guys, having them pick you up at the nut house. I had her upstate at my parents' place. Little Miss Julie. Everyone back home in Loudonville insisted on treating me like a war bride, and that was too much, even for me. So I ginned up the happy news as best I could and spent a lot of time in the city. My parents thought I had some loose ends to take care of. What I had were some loose wires. Who, what, when, where. That's what they taught me in journalism school. Who? Old Bill and Dave and Lucian. Then we'll add Jack and Alan. What, when, where. Birth of the Beats, 1944, Manhattan. Dave was this big, abrupt guy who had red hair sticking out in all directions. He had a booming voice and was a complete stranger to all self-doubt. He and Bill were both from the rich side of St. Louis, and they also were both queer. And I have to say, the best friend you can be without actually screwing. Bill thought Dave was the funniest guy ever. They took a trip to Europe together. They chased boys together. Dave didn't give a damn what anyone thought. He used to regale Bill with descriptions of the perfect boy. He met that boy in St. Louis when they got back. Lucian. Dave was 27 at the time and a scoutmaster. Lucian was 13 and one of the scouts. He didn't have a dad. For a few years, Lucian's mom was pleased that a scoutmaster was around so much. Then she began finding pretexts to send her son to different cities. A few weeks later, same city, there was Dave. Chicago, Andover, New Brunswick. Like I said, Dave didn't give a damn what anyone thought, just what Lucian thought. And Lucian half thought that Dave was his dad. Dave was an English instructor, and say what you want about him, he loved language. And that was the only thing about Dave that ever rubbed off onto Lucian. Here are some lessons that Lucian took from Dave. How to read Rimbaud in French. How to loudly chant "A Season in Hell" arm in arm down the midnight streets of bourgeois neighborhoods. How to drink. how to fend off requests for blowjobs, how to get Dave to write his term papers, how to not give a damn, how to make Dave jealous, how to be proud of unwanted attention, how to drink a lot. Here's what Dave took from Lucian, his hope of real friends. Here's what Lucian tried to take from Lucian, his life. He was discovered with his head in an oven, coincidentally after a long car ride with Dave. He was committed for a few weeks and then moved to New York. I guess Dave couldn't talk his way into the nut house, but he wasted no time in getting to Manhattan. His school instructoring and scout mastering days were far behind him. Now he was honing his love of language and disregard for conventional morality while on his knees, scrubbing stools. It's terrible what that kind of attraction can make you do. I should know. I should know. Oh, look! Bill's using his tears to wipe the blood off my face. So here's how it all went down. Lucian enrolled in Columbia, where he met my roommate Edie in a class there. Jack was a merchant marine who wrote novels. He was Edie's boyfriend. Bill straggled into the city to pal around with Dave. Alan was a young poet whom Lucian met at the dorm there. We all had a mad crush on Lucian. You'd think the last thing he needed was more people crushing on him, but when did it ever work out that way? I can still picture him, 19, tall, slim and handsome. He moved like a big cat, indifferent and graceful. Hair so blonde and eyes so green. He'd quote Saint-Jean-Père and snarl when you didn't catch on, and then appear at your door with a rueful smile and a bottle of Bordeaux when he learned that your feelings were hurt. Like he had no idea. Like for all the world he just wanted to be liked, not crushed. But when did it ever end up that way? If only he could have met just Jack and not the rest of us. Jack would have punched out Dave and that would have been the end of that. But when did it ever end up that way? They used to drink and chase skirts, talk big He-Man books. They talk about how you can't come home again and compare how many inches they'd written that day. Lucian looked happy around Jack, like a handsome brawny mutt from St. Louis, living the life. Not some fatherless model groomed to be the American Rambo, but instead of just Jack, he got all of us. The whole box of jigsaw puzzle pieces yearning to find their place. It was almost diabolical how well those pieces fit together after Lucian appeared. The queer and unsure pieces, the just out of the loony bin pieces, and the mooning over handsome poets pieces. He was that one last wild card piece that connected them all. The piece with the looks, the crazy, the vision, that slippery vision. I couldn't begin to tell you what it was, but then again, neither could he. But he would turn so serious, and we would turn so moony. Of course, there was another piece, one that wasn't fitting in so very well. the fly in the ointment of our infatuation. Dave was constantly rushing into the bar and shoving himself in right beside Lucian. Dave, who still thought he came first, who was seeing the glances around the table.
Hey, move over.
Why should I? I was here first.
In your dreams, honey.
Leave her alone.
Let's see what Lucian thinks. Hey, Lucian. Lucian. Lucian!
For God's sake, can't you just shut up? One day, one very hot day in August, Jack and Lucian had another sort of vision. They were going to sign on to a freighter bound for France, jump ship when it got there, and follow the troops into Paris. They got into an argument with the chief mate before it even left the dock and were tossed off the boat. Jack got down on the dumps and went home. Lucian went out to drown his sorrows, which is where Dave found him, alone and hurting. They closed the place down and then took a bottle over to the banks of the Hudson. Dave seemed to sense that this was his chance, at last, to comfort Lucian with a blowjob. Lucian was having none of it. Dave pleaded. This had been going on since Lucian was 13. He was drunk and mad, and he screamed, "I ought to kill you!"
Why don't you then, huh?
So he did. With his Boy Scout knife. 12 times. In the heart. Once for each muzzle. Oh, look, the medics are here. They're pulling Bill off me. Oh, such strong young men. Oh, dear. I should have paid more attention to my hair. Now they're looking for a pulse. Isn't that the old joke about guys? Anything with a pulse? Looks like old Joni's still in the game. Lucian was terrified he'd get the chair. But he spent 2 years in a reformatory, and that was it. Dave was, after all, a known homosexual. And Lucian, well, Lucian was quite the youth. Here's the curious thing. Bill never seems to get very upset about all this. I mean, this was the guy that he'd known since they were kids, that he'd caroused around Europe with, that he thought was hysterically funny. Here Lucian kills this guy, kills him. And Bill never even seems to break stride. Of course, Bill was not then a known homosexual. I knew, as soon as I first saw him, that he was queer. But it didn't matter. We connected on some telepathic level back in those days. We used to play this game. We'd each take a piece of paper and mark it off into 9 squares, and then mark each of those squares off into 9 more. We'd go to separate rooms, and I would draw an image in that first square, any image, and concentrate on it for about 10 seconds. Then he would concentrate on his sheet and draw an image in the first square on his sheet. We did this 81 times. 3 to the third times 3. Nearly every time, 40 or 50 at least, would match up. Same image, same square. Tell me that's chance. That's fate. That's a connection, and you don't care if they're queer or straight or what have you. That's fate. And if you're a poet or an artist, you follow it. You follow it or you're fucked. That's what you do with all those squares. If you were paying attention, you noticed that I was the transmitter. And Bill was the receiver. Some habits are hard to break. My habit was Benny's. Benzodrine inhalers. You could buy a tube for $0.25. Inside they had 6 strips of blotting paper soaked in speed. You could roll up a sheet of paper into a ball and put it on your tongue, and then wash it down with coffee. Each piece of paper was good for a couple hours, at least at the start. By Christmas after the war, I was going through a tube a day. Bill's thing was junk. He was shooting up his monthly allowance in 2 weeks and began forging prescriptions. One time he spelled Dilaudid with 2 L's and got busted. They suspended his sentence, but he had to go back to St. Louis. I began taking in all sorts of con men and hustlers just to pay the rent. Everything in the place was hot. People were getting arrested. Alan was in his room, oblivious, writing odes that no one read. Jack and I were doing so many bennies we could see radioactive spores pushing up through our skin and floating us to the future. It couldn't last. One day, I got picked up on Times Square and taken to Bellevue. Stop me if you've heard this before. Here's the thing about Bill. He hears about my predicament, and he drives halfway across the country. It may have saved my life at the time. As soon as he got me out, we went to a hotel room. Stop me if you've heard this before. That night, little Billy was conceived. I started on my first tube the next morning as we drove upstate to pick up Julie. Bill never said a word. As soon as I got to feeling more or less like myself, I mentioned to Bill that we should stop and see Lucian. I mean, the prison was right there on the same road. All we had to do was keep going and not turn. I mean, not one of us had ever been there to see him. I mean, it just didn't seem right. I mean, I was talking up a street with the old Bennies and old Bill, and he never said a word. Just turned south at Binghamton. After that, we drove for the most god-awful long stretches in absolute silence. I found out later it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Lucian had been released the week before. I didn't know he was getting out. He didn't know I was put in. What if we had known? I thought a lot about Bill and me on that long car ride south. Probably more than before, or ever since. After all, he's the one who came and got me. That's as close as I ever got to a proposal. And sitting in that car, hour after hour, little Miss Julie whining in the back, neither one of us saying a word as New York disappeared behind us, is as near as I got to saying yes. We didn't stop in St. Louis. He didn't want to deal with explaining me to his parents. I guess it would be more accurate to say he didn't want to deal with himself as he explained me to his parents. You see, they still didn't know he was queer. Maybe it would be most accurate to say that he didn't want to deal with me watching him as he explained me to his parents. See, he used to say that I had the gift of sizing people up. I could look right through people with a single glance. He also used to say that the only other person he knew like that was his mother, the one who refused to see that he was queer. So, Bill and I, the couple that no one could figure, I was the mother who knew he was queer. And Bill? Well, now that I've had even more time to think about it, he was the little boy who couldn't cry. The lost little boy who could read my mind. Huh, They're loading me onto the ambulance. Tell the little guy he can come along for the ride. I'm already starting to feel the future pushing up through me, like radioactive spores. The plan was to raise weed on that farm in Texas. For a while it was just Bill and Julie and me. For a while things were pretty good. No boys, no junk. Bill was determined to write a book, to become a writer. He used to stare at his typewriter for hours at a time and maybe manage a line or two. Then he'd rip that sheet out, knife it to a tree, step off 30 paces, turn around and put a bullet right through the middle of it. That piece of paper never even got off a shot. The bottom fell out when Bill took the weed to New York and found out it was too green to sell. By that time, our neighbors were already starting to get a little hinky about the people we had coming through. Then one night, we were busted screwing beside the road, somewhere out in wherever the hell Texas. Public lewdness and child endangerment. The kids were right there. It's not like we sold them out to slavery. It seemed like time to split. So we moved to New Orleans, where the bennies were easier to come by. I was doing about 3 tubes a day by this time. So memory is not my friend. I do remember a little Miss Helen something staying for a visit. A visit she won't soon forget. I sent her out on inhaler runs because people were starting to refuse to sell them to me. She also helped with the kids. I've had a lot of people help with the kids. Strange women, mostly, once we moved south. Some kind mother would see them and offer to help. I need a lot of help with the kids. I have trouble bathing them and things like that. I have trouble touching them. It's the nut house, okay? The kids remind me of the nut house. I clean up all around them, all day, all around them, inch by inch, all around them, because I would do anything for them, anything except I wanted to check myself into some place, but I was afraid I'd come back with number 3.
Miss Joan, the kids are peeing in the dishes.
So what? It disinfects them.
Oh, look at her arm.
If she's chewing on her arm, it's because she's working through issues.
I beg your pardon.
Remind me again, how many kids have you got? Oh, that's right. None. It couldn't last. Bill got busted for junk, and we skipped bail for Mexico City, where the bennies are almost impossible to come by. I tried everything. I tried white knuckling it. I tried Bill's crackpot Oregon collector. You know what worked? Yep. In March, Bill kicked again. By this time, we both knew the drill. He was drunk for a month and chasing boys all over town. One of them he still noticed after the fog had lifted. A slender young blonde will-o'-the-wisp named Louis. Louis. Sounds a bit like Lucian, doesn't it? He looked a bit like Lucian, too, in a real low-rent kind of way. Or should I say rent boy kind of way. He came down for a visit, you know. Lucian, a few months before that, with his girlfriend. I didn't think she was any good for him. Lucian needed somebody who remembered what it used to be like, who remembered his vision. Nowadays, nobody had a vision and nobody talked about it. Bill was busy writing a novel about being a junkie. A novel. It was his diary. So when Lucian left, I moved out and filed for divorce. Bill said,
"You can't divorce me. We're not even married."
But we were common law by that time. And that meant that I would get some of the money that his parents sent.
Let's blow this popsicle stand. What do you say, Joni? Get away from all these lowlives and junkies. Central America, Costa Rica. They say servants there are pennies a day.
Ha ha!
Soon as the farm sells, we'll move. I'll kick. And Joni, you will live like a queen.
Ha ha! The joke was on me. I moved back. In June, the money from selling the farm finally came through. In July, Bill took off with Lewis for South America, leaving me here with the Untouchables. He'd read about some plant in some dime store magazine. Yahe, guaranteed to increase telepathic sensitivity and induce automatic obedience. Not my drug of choice by that time. Well, you can imagine I was fit to be tied. So when Lucian came down for another visit, I thought, what the hell? It won't be long before the obedience drug arrives.
Has the obedience drug guy come yet?
No, but he's breathing hard. Where were we? Lucian. Lucian came down for another visit. With Alan this time. Without his girlfriend. Let me tell you, we could still knock it back. Lucian wanted me to come back with them. But I couldn't leave the kids behind with old Bill. I wanted him to stay. But he'd just been hired by a big press agency. After jail, it was about the best he could hope for. Life in the suburbs awaited. One drunken week. That's all, folks. I hope you get more. So, this is what I got. On the day that Lucian leaves, old Hangdog Bill comes straggling back. Would he have given two goddams about leaving me with the kids if Lewis had actually wanted him? Did he, in fact, give two actual goddams when he did, in fact, leave me the month before? The kids were overjoyed to see him. Me? I let him have it. I said I was sick and tired and I'd had it up to here. I told him that if another chance with Lucian came along, I was taking it. I also said, maybe this is how Dave felt. You ever think about that? Maybe this is what happens when you follow a blonde boy who doesn't care about you halfway across the continent. Maybe this is what happens when you lose the respect of everyone you meet along the way because the kid can barely suffer your presence and lead you around by your nose. I also tell him I'll give him as much sympathy as he ever gave Dave. None. Something flickers deep inside. Something that long ago wanted to be grief. He stomps out. Remember how I said that he cried twice today? He comes back a couple hours later, bawling like a baby, not wanting to tell me a thing about it. Mama gets it out of him. It was because he gave some guy on the street a knife that he wanted sharpened. A knife that he bought in Ecuador. As soon as he handed it over, a conviction overwhelmed him. Of doom. Ugliness. Nothing could stop it. He broke down and cried. That knife that he for some reason wanted sharpened, it was a Boy Scout knife. And here we are at the hospital. Doctors and orderlies rushing out. I'm on my way to Dr. Benway. No doubt about it. Time to wrap this up. I'm not feeling like such a clean sheet anymore. Lewis arrives with a friend who had just got into town. This puts Bill on edge. Nothing to make you feel like an old pervert, like discovering one of your new young friends is talking with one of his real friends. So Bill starts droning on about how he could always provide for his family. This puts me on edge. He opinionates that he could always provide for his family, always, as long as he had his guns. Even if he were kicking it, he'd be out there dropping the bison. This gets on my last nerve. My last nerve. I'll have to remember that. So I tell him that in those circumstances, his family would starve. Starve, that's right. I told him he couldn't shoot straight. His face grows very strange.
Put that glass on your head, Joni. Let me show the boys what a great shot old Bill is.
Stop me. If you've heard this before. I look at the gun, pointed just above my head. I think of glass shrapnel filling the room. I can't watch this. You know I can't stand the sight of blood. I think of the apple in that Texas orchard. Bill and I alone. For the first time. And in a desolate country. I found a game for us to play. One that called for the ultimate trust. We played it well. Flawlessly. In my mind, our eyes lock. I sit straight up, just a little taller.
Bang!
Bang, bang, he shot me down, bang, bang, I hit the ground, bang, bang, that awful sound, bang, bang, my baby shot me down.